Okay guys, I'm going to be making a video on equipment fixation when it comes to protection training. So one of the things that sometimes gets in the way of training your dog or working with a dog that is very prey driven, which is what we want in protection training. We want a very prey driven dog, a dog that is going to be very happy and excited about biting on the equipment, at least to teach him things. Okay, I know this brings up a slightly different topic, like, well, we don't want the dog to be fixed on the equipment, we want the dog to bite for real. But essentially, whether you're doing sport work or real protection training, you're going to have to use equipment. It's just going to happen. It's a necessary evil, either way you look at it, okay? And the equipment is there to help us. It's there to really help us develop that dog. If it's sport work, equipment's going to be your best friend, okay? If it is, real protection training, if it's police work, equipment is still going to be your best friend, because equipment will allow you to teach these dogs the proper skills to do the real thing. So one of the issues that you're going to run into sometimes is going to be that the dog just wants to play with the equipment. Now this might be because of the imprinting of the dog, or this might be just because that's just how that dog is, okay? And what you'll notice is with equipment fixation, you're going to have some issues, which means the dog is going to be too locked in prey. It's not going to be wanting to bark. It's not going to be thinking straight. It's just going to be just prey, not a whole lot of thinking, and that can sometimes, with some dogs, get in your way. So how do we fix this, or how do we address this? Is if we have a young dog, what I like to do is I like to use marker training, which means clicker training. Right? You don't have to do this with a clicker. You can do it with verbal, but you really should understand what marker training is first. If you don't understand what marker training is, parts of this video at least might go over your head a little bit. So I want to use marker training because it allows me to tell that dog which moment was perfect for him to get rewarded. And here's what I mean by that. You're going to see this in some of the videos that I'm posting here too. Naturally, I want the dog to focus on me. Even if I have the equipment in my hand, even if I have the tug right here, or if I have the tug on the ground, I want the dog to look right at me, give me what I want, which is the intensity, the barking, and then I will play with the dog, right? I want the dog to do that. But what happens is, if I have the equipment right here, and even if it's right here, and I'm wearing it, all the dog might do is, the dog might just look at my sleeve the entire time, and maybe not even bark, okay? So what I want is, I want the dog to, sometimes get away from the equipment and look at me and go, dude, let's play this game. That's what I want to do with all the dogs that I work with. That's my goal with my club dogs. I want the dog to manipulate the helper, the decoy, and let the decoy know, hey, dude, let's play this game, versus the dog looking at my arm or the dog looking at the sleeve and going, give me that thing, okay? If I have the sleeve right here and the dog happens to be looking at me out of frustration, I want to be able to mark that and then instantly go, okay, now we can play, okay? So in the video, you're going to see me, instead of doing this move right here, so when agitating the dog, instead of going like this, instead of whipping, cracking the whip or using the clatter stick to let the dog know, hey, dude, go ahead and play. What I want to do is, with the slightly older dogs, puppy work is different, but with the slightly older dogs, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have sessions where I actually hide the sleeve, okay? So the dog knows I have the sleeve. The dog knows we're going to play this awesome game. But rather than just do this, I'm just going to hide the sleeve. I'm going to be a little bit animated about this, and I'm going to look at the dog, and I'm going to maybe make a little bit of noise. I'm going to be very prey oriented with my movements, or I'm not going to trigger defense drive. I'm not going to be all frontal. My goal is not to intimidate the dog. I'm going to be very submissive, very prey oriented with my movement, to trigger some of that, a little bit of that prey drive. But I'm not going to move back and forth. I'm not going to run side to side if I want to work on this. I'm going to hide it. I'm going to just kind of stand a little bit still, maybe trigger a little bit of movement there. And once the dog gets frustrated and goes, dude, I know you have the sleeve, you will actually see the dog looking for the sleeve. You actually see the dog looking at your arm, but you know, it's hidden, right? So the dog's gonna be like, dude, what are you doing? Give me that, pull out the sleeve. You know what to do, right? So I'm just gonna stay there. And the moment the dog looks at me, the moment the dog barks, and even if it barks, but it still keeps looking for the sleeve, I'm gonna wait just a little bit more. And the moment the dog barks and looks at me as it's barking, that's when marker training comes in. Okay, that's when I'm gonna mark it. I'm gonna go yes, or click if that's something you're using. So dog barks, looks at me, yes, and then I'm gonna pull out the sleeve, and then I'm gonna play with the dog.
Good girl.
Now, along the way, the dogs that you're gonna work with are gonna do a number of things. They might not bark at all. They might just be quiet looking for the sleeve because they're in so much prey drive that that's what they're gonna do. They're just gonna wait and wait and wait. So if that happens, not a huge deal. You have to learn to fight one battle at a time. So for instance, if my goal is to get this dog to vocalize, even just a little bit, maybe I'm not gonna work on the dog looking at me. That might not be the right session for that dog. If my goal is to get this dog to bark, maybe what I'm gonna focus on is just bark, okay? Even if I have to have the sleeve within sight. Okay, if the dog is just barking and it gives me a little bit of vocalization, I'm gonna again mark it, whether it's with a click or with a yes, and then I'm gonna give him the sleeve, okay? One battle at a time. And you're gonna have different dogs that are automatically, right from the get-go, without even any teaching, they're automatically gonna look at you. Even if you have the equipment on you, you're gonna have dogs, this is a temperament trait too, you're gonna have dogs that right away are gonna look at you and go, dude, let's play this game. And those dogs are awesome because obviously they're already doing about 70% of the work for you. You just have to make sure that you don't mess it up. Obviously, if you have that dog will, you know, be smooth sailing, and you're not gonna have to worry about equipment fixation quite as much, unless of course you mess it up, okay? The other thing too about, you know, working on the dog looking at you versus just looking for the sleeve is safety. So if it's a young dog, I just have to have a good handler that is not gonna be moving back and forth, okay? I want the handler to be a post, and I have to trust my handler too. Because as I'm doing this, right, the dog's gonna be barking at me, right, hopefully, and maybe looking for the toy. And if my handler, like, you know, maybe doesn't post up really good, and then the dog starts pulling towards me, all that frustration might be displaced in a way that makes the dog bite me instead of obviously the equipment that I'm hiding to begin with. So my handler has to be posted up. Okay, so with a young dog, it's not as difficult because young dogs are typically not full grown, so they're young dogs. The handling is a little bit easier. But when you have a full grown dog and you're trying to pull out this technique, this is the time where the handler has got to have their crap together. Because if that handler is handling an 80-pound dog, a 60-pound dog, and you know, I'm kind of hiding the equipment and I'm doing my thing, and the dog gets frustrated because it's looking for the equipment, it keeps pulling, or maybe it finally starts barking at me, making eye contact with me. Again, if that handler doesn't have his crap together, now I can get bit. It's not good, okay? So these are some things that you have to take into account. Safety is a huge component of protection training. And even if we're doing something very simple like this, you can still get hurt. So you have to trust your handler. Your handler has got to pay attention, and they have to follow instruction. But anyway, this is how you would do it. It's marker training and getting the dog to focus on you and let the dog know this is how we play the game. Not by staring or looking for the equipment, but by looking at me, okay, directing your frustration at me, and do it in a way that, you know, allows you to play the game that you want to play by just focusing on me, not the equipment.